Hey, how's it going, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. This is Poker of HVAC, and before I get started on Florida Contractors Manual, there's a couple things I want to go over. So if you're taking business and finance exam, 60% of your questions are going to be coming from this book, Florida Contractors Manual. Now, when I went to the exam, my strength about the exam was I knew the book properly, okay? And the weakness that I had about this whole exam for the business and finance was math. When I went to the exam hall, I probably had about 60 to 65% knowledge of the actual math questions that I had in the exam. All right, so I'm gonna get right into this. So Florida Contractors Manual. Why am I making this video? I'm making this video because I pretty much watched all the videos on YouTube that covers Florida Contractors Manual. And probably one or two videos only covered about the highlighting part about the book. Now, highlighting, it's very important. Why? Because you don't want, when you're taking the exam, you don't want to just go over one page and another whenever you're taking the exam. Highlighting makes it way easier for you to navigate. And there's more into it. I'll go over it as I unfold one chapter after another. I do want to apologize for some of the scratching. I have a younger sister, so you guys know what happened. First chapter we have in this book, it's called Business Planning. As you guys can see here. Second chapter we'll have about licensing. It talks pretty much everything about licensing, from renewing it, penalties, and all those stuff. And then we have financial management. This is where you guys are gonna get some of those accounting questions. Account receivables, accounts payable, debit, credit, all kind of stuff. And then we have risk management. This pretty much talks about insurance. What happens if you have this coverage? What happens if you have that coverage? And all those kind of things. And the fifth chapter we have is labor and employment laws. It talks about labor laws. Sorry. So this chapter also covers some of those Florida acts. So it will have Labor Act, Civil Rights Act, and then ADS Act, Disability Act. And the sixth chapter we have workers' compensation. So workers' compensation, that's also a big chapter that this book covers. So on that chapter, you guys will see the penalties for workers' compensation, how much you'll have to pay for partial disability, and those sort of things. And then of course we have safety. This mostly talks about OSHA, and there's more which we'll go over. And then on chapter 8 we have construction contracts and subcontracts. So this chapter also talks about contracts and subcontracts that we will be going over for construction. And let me tell you guys this, for contracts, there's actually 3 chapters in this book that talks about contract. And I have them all tabbed, and I will also go over those as we move on from one chapter to another. So make sure you guys don't forget to take any notes. And of course, one of those most confusing part is the lien chapter, construction liens and payment bonds. So lien laws, for all sort of lien laws, you guys will be coming over to chapter 9. And chapter 10, it talks about project management. And this is one of the chapter that also covers construction contracts, which we will go over again whenever we move on to chapter 10. So first chapter, business planning and organization. So business planning and organization. This chapter covers pretty much everything about planning, business organization, name, business structure, S corporation, partnerships, joint venture, registration, sales tax, qualifying agent, finance. So a little basic about how you're gonna be starting a business. That's what it covers in this chapter. And I will only be showing you guys about the highlighted part of this book, because 80% of my stuff that I highlighted, they pretty much all came common when I was taking the exam. So I'm not gonna be wasting your time by going over one page after another. I will only show you the pages that I have highlighted. So business planning. So first thing you guys want to highlight is the RFP, request for proposal. It's on the sales and marketing section. So what it covers is, I'm just gonna read this paragraph here so you guys have a general knowledge about it. Describing how a sale will actually happen is included in this section. In construction, a sale is considered by a contract won typically through hard bidding or RFP, request for proposal. But eventually, when you have established repeat clients, you may be shortlisted on RFP and have a greater chance of obtaining the contract. So the key part we're highlighting here is RFP, and it's on page 7, chapter 1. Page 8, we're gonna be highlighting sole proprietorship and the advantages of it and disadvantages of it. Make sure you guys are highlighting every part of these business structures: partnership, sole proprietorship, and joint ventures, corporations. So anyways, let's highlight the advantageous sections and the disadvantageous section of sole proprietorship. So if ever you guys any question about sole proprietorship, it's gonna be on chapter 1, which is business planning, and it's on page 1. It's on page 8, chapter 1. For joint venture, try highlighting this whole section here. A joint venture is a special combination of two or more persons or entities jointly seeking a profit in some specific venture without an actual partnership or corporate designation. By the same rules that governs partnerships. So for joint ventures, it covers the same rule that partnership has. So automatically, if you guys get any sort of rules for joint venture, redirect to partnerships, which is over here. Now let's highlight this paragraph that we have over here. The primary difference between a partnership and a joint venture is that a partnership is usually created for the general transaction of the business of a particular type, while the joint venture is usually limited to a single transaction. Please highlight this line over here, single transaction. The advantages and disadvantages of a joint venture are substantially the same as those listed above for partnerships. Control for the joint venture is same as partnership. Go ahead and highlight this line. Now we're going to talk about corporation. Corporations are creation of statutes and can exist only to the extent in the form authorized by law. The corporate form of business is usually the costliest to organize. I'm going to be reading those highlighted lines only, so please follow up and highlight those important key factors only. Now go ahead, highlight the advantages of corporation. and also go ahead and highlight the disadvantages for corporation. Now we're going to talk about S corporation. Provision allows shareholders to absorb all corporate income or losses as partner and report it as individual taxpayers. In essence, the S corporation is not affected by corporate income taxes, thereby eliminating the double taxation feature of standard corporation. Please go ahead and highlight individual taxpayer and also highlight the double taxation, because S corporation is not affected by double taxation. The election of S corporation status is a tax matter as provided by IRS, so we're gonna avoid that part. And here's some of the requirements that must be met by corporation, and go ahead, highlight some of this stuff, like 20% or more of its revenue. Now let's talk about the control of the business on corporation. Control depends on stock ownership. In other words, 50% stock ownership or control means that you're able to make policy decisions. Go ahead and highlight 51% stock ownership. Now we're gonna move over to registration. Registration. So this is one of the questions that came common for me. Occupational licenses. And I forgot the exact question, what it was, but it was asking about, let me see if I can remember. Check with it. Yeah, it asked something about it asked something about licenses, and as I read through it, I came to this section, and it was reading exactly the same line or the answer for that question that I had. So go ahead and highlight the occupational licenses for me, and also highlight the certificate of occupancy and zoning permits on the registration section. Now we're gonna talk about fictitious name registration. If a business failed to comply with this act, the business and its members, if any business failed to comply with this act, it's a misdemeanor of 2nd degree. So go ahead, highlight that part for me. A person may engage in business under a fictitious name by registering the name with the division of corporation by filling out an application for registration of fictitious name. Please go ahead and highlight that for me. Fictitious name must be advertised one time in a newspaper in the county where applicant's principal place of business will be located, and proof of publication need not to be submitted. If a change of ownership occurs, the owners of record must file a cancellation and registration within 30 days of the change. Go ahead and highlight the 30 days of the change. Fictitious names are valid for 5 years and expires on December 31st of the 5th year. So any name you claim, business name you claim, it's going to be valid for 5 years, and it's going to be expiring on 31st of every 5th year. Each fictitious name registration must be renewed between July 1st and December 31st of the expiration year to maintain registration under this act. So to renew it, it's going to has to be between July 1st and December 31st of the expiration year. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Sales tax number. So this is going to be the application we're going to be using for sales tax. So DR application for certificate of registration. So certificate of registration application, this is the application we have, DR1. Please go ahead and highlight that for me. And of course, this is the questions that I got. Employer identification number, EIN number. That's the question I got in the exam, and it was asking me about what date it has to be filed. So this EIN number that you guys see here, the registration, unless you're a sole proprietor, the registration is required even though you may not have employees. The form must be filed on or before the 7th day after the date on which business begins. 7th day. Please go ahead and highlight that for me. That's the question I got. That's a question I got in the exam. And I remember I had to look for it like for 10-15 minutes. I know I shouldn't have took that much time, but I knew that I knew this answer. I knew this answer, so it took me a little time, but I was able to get the answer. But I do recommend you guys do not spend more than 4 minutes on any question. If anything more than that, just highlight it. Not highlight it, but you could just mark it, and you can always come back to it later. I do not recommend that. I had a lot of time in my hand because I was probably some of these questions I knew because I read this book so many times. So some of the questions I just knew. So it was just like cats in the bag for me. I just looked at it, marked it, moved on to the new one. Okay, so next page. Qualifying agents. It just talks about qualifying agents. Nothing major here to highlight. Talks about Texas questions and stuff. All right, so business management. This chapter is not this chapter. This page is pretty important. So make sure you guys are highlighting planning, organizing, directing, controlling, standardizing. Also highlight if the results differ from the original plan, make sure corrections are made. Highlight that on controlling section. And highlight standard operating procedure for standardizing chapter. Now let's move on to dissolution or termination of business organization. The voluntary dissolution or termination of a business organization must be considered with as much thought and planning as is devoted to the initial organization of the business plan. The method, manner, and timing of business termination may have significant tax consequences. Go ahead and highlight significant tax consequences and the method, manner, and timing of the business for me. It is strongly recommended that the professional advice of the accountants and attorneys be solicited to avoid unanticipated adverse financial consequences. Partnership dissolution or termination. Go ahead and highlight partnership dissolutions and terminations, because you will get some. I also remember getting something similar to it, and it also had so it was MCQ, so it had like 4 options, and I had it highlighted. So all I did, I just went on the section, and the answers were pretty much there, and I picked it. And that's the best part about highlighting. You don't have to look for it that much because you know pretty much all your stuff that highlighted, the questions that are gonna be common in the exam. Now let's move on to the last paragraph. The Florida Uniform Partnership Act. Go ahead and highlight that for me. A partnership is dissolved by any events that makes it unlawful for the business of the partnership to be carried on or for the members to carry it on in the partnership. The death of any partnership. So you don't have to highlight everything here. Just highlight partnership is dissolved by, and the key terms like unlawful, partnership to be carried on, death. Just highlight death. And then a court decree under the Partnership Act. This is the question I had in the exam about partnership dissolutions. I remember the exact answer I saw. It was a court decree under the Partnership Act. Okay, moving on. Corporate dissolution and liquidation. Dissolution of a corporate entity refers to the formal termination of the corporate existence as prescribed by law. Two types of dissolution should be distinguished. So just go ahead and highlight two types of dissolution. Like I said before, we don't have to highlight everything. Now, resources. This chapter is pretty important. So, not chapter, this page is pretty important. So go ahead and highlight any dredged, excavated, or fill materials. Highlight this section and also highlight construction of any structure in or across or any navigable waters, so US, or any road, pipeline, conveyor system, or any structure over, on, or adjacent to a leave or similar federally maintained structure. So for the permit for any of this construction, you guys will have to contact U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. All right. So make sure you guys have this, both of this highlighted. Now, the form. I probably had about 4 to 5 questions just from this single page alone. And the reason why I have a tab on this page as well, you guys can see required forms. I highly recommend you guys tabbing your books. Highly recommend it. So one of the questions I had was the form 940, of course, used to report and pay on an annual basis the federal unemployment compensation tax. If you have no employees, this form is not needed. So this is one of the questions I had. I also had a question about the form 941, employer's quarterly tax return. Used to report on a quarterly basis the income tax, Social Security, Medicare taxes, withheld from employee wages, and Social Security and Medicare tax matched by the employer. So go ahead and highlight all these forms that you guys see here. Form UCS 1, report to determine status. This form is used to determine if the employer is liable for unemployment compensation tax and to apply for state unemployment compensation number. Form UCS 1. And then we have Form UCT 6S, Unemployment Compensation Tax Return. It's used to report and pay quarterly employers' unemployment compensation tax based on employees' wages. This is paid to the State Unemployment Compensation Fund, not to be confused with Workers' Compensation Insurance. It's different than the Workers' Compensation Insurance. And here we have the address for workers' compensation. If you're required to carry worker compensation coverage, then you could just call these guys here, Department of Financial Services. And then we have the form DR 15CS, Sales and Use Tax Report. It's used to report and pay monthly sales tax collected. When filed in a timely manner, a collection allowance of 2.5% of the first $1,200 tax liability with a maximum of $30, which is what? Lunch money. All right, so we're gonna get back about 2.5% of that amount if we file it timely. The form DR 15CS, okay? That's the form we use to collect taxes. All right, so moving on. Next form we have is DR 601AC. It's a form we use to report intangible personal property tax return. And this form we have over here, which is similar, not similar, quite similar if you look at it, but they're completely different. DR 601A1 Intangible Personal Property Tax Return. It's used to report and pay tax annually on intangible property such as accounts receivable, stocks, bonds, notes, and loans. Okay, and then let's go over this section, corporate income tax. This form is to be filed if your business is a corporation or if you are planning to incorporate. General or limited partnership are not subject to this tax unless one partner is a corporation, in which case a Florida partnership return must be filed. Go ahead and just highlight are not subject to this tax, because that's just a key term for this section. All right, so DR 405 Tangible Personal Property Tax Report. It's used to report tangible personal property. For example, equipment like furniture and etc. And inventory on a yearly basis. Okay, and next one we have is county and city. City license and tax if required. County license and tax if required. You guys could just highlight this part and move on. And nothing really to highlight on this page, so I'm gonna move over. And go ahead, just highlight Small Business Administration, SBA. You might get some of the questions here about how many offices they have. I never had any. I never got any questions about this on exam. But just go ahead and highlight 3 Florida offices here. And nothing major to highlight over here. So we are done with the first chapter for Florida Contractors Manual. The second chapter that we have is licensing. So for the licensing chapter, it has a huge table of contents. So most of the things you could just find it on table of contents. So some of the stuff I have highlighted on table of contents is I will go over, but I do want to go over with all the contents that licensing has. First content that we have is licensing. And the next one is professional regulation in general. And then Department of Business and Professional Regulation, professional boards, regulational contracts, contractors in Florida, Chapter 489, Florida statutes. I think it'll be more helpful if I just go over the highlighted part. So I'm just gonna move on. This definitely marks some of the key terms. For example, Chapter 455, Chapter 489, Chapter 489, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, which we're gonna go over in a little bit. So, State Contractor Certification and Registration, page 26. Go ahead and highlight 50 feet in height and all building or residence. A subcontractor, however, is not certified or registered, may perform construction under the supervision of a person who is certified or registered, as long as the work is within the scope of the supervising contractor's license. The supervising contractor is responsible for the work, and the subcontractor being supervised is not engaged in construction work that would require a license as a contractor. So go ahead, just highlight this section for me as well. And for licensing requirements, just highlight the certified contractor and the registered contractor part. That would be it for this page. Now, this page we have here, which talks about certified construction contractors and To be eligible to take an examination for certification, an applicant must be of at least 18 years of age, be of good moral and character, and meet one of the following requirements, which is possess a 4-year of college degree in engineering, architecture, or building construction, have at least 4 years of active experience. Go ahead and just highlight the numbers for me. The 4-year for college, 4-year of active experience, and 4 years of active experience as a worker who is able to command the rate of mechanic in his particular trade with at least 1 year of active experience as a foreman, have a combination of college credits, experience as a foreman totaling 4 years, again as follows: combination of at least 1 year, combination of at least 1 year of experience as a skilled worker, combination of at least 2 years of experience as a skilled worker, 1 year of experience as a foreman, etc. Go ahead and just highlight these numbers for me. Now, one of the questions I did get on the exam was this one. Talks about an active certified residential contractor with at least how many years of proven experience is eligible to take the building contractors examination. And I had the answer right on the book. It was at least 3 years of proven experience. So it saved me so much time just because I had all of this stuff highlighted, and I had pretty much tabs on every chapter of important keynotes. All right, so moving on. Yeah, if you guys come over to the next page as well, you will see the number of years. So go ahead and highlight all of these years for me as well. And over here we have general contractor. Commercial experience must be in 4 or more of the following areas. So just highlight 4 or more and the experience part. And if you guys do get questions, it's gonna be probably three wrong answer, and one of the answers is gonna be available right in this section. Okay, and swimming pool contractor. We don't have that much stuff highlighted here, but go ahead and highlight a minimum of 2,000 person hour is used for the purpose of determining full equivalency. And for the certified electrical alarm system contractors, go ahead and highlight 12 years prior to filing and at least 6 years. And then they have much stuff highlighted here as well. And right now, let's move over to the fees section that we have here. So as you guys can see, there's this section here that talks about Rules 61 G4-12.001. So these are really complicated pages. You guys don't want to be going over to these pages until you have checked like the basic section of the chapters. Because let me just show you guys the page they're talking about, which is 61 G4-12.009. So it's should be 009. So right over here. So I do have some of the stuff highlighted, which we're gonna go over after we're done with the first section or the second section. But these pages, you guys don't want to be coming over to these pages, because this is where it gets confusing. I tried avoiding these pages as much as I could. That's why it's better to know the information on the basic pages, so we don't ever have to go on these pages. And as far as I remember, I didn't really have to go on these pages when I was taking the exam, but it's always better to prepare for the worst case scenario. So I will show you guys what I have highlighted for these sections as well. And I will tell you guys when it's probably the best idea to go on these pages if ever you guys come across some complicated questions. So anyways, so for this fee section, we don't have much stuff to highlight. So go ahead and highlight a plumbing contractor who wishes to engage in business of installation, improvement, repair, or maintenance. Take 6 hours of continuing education. And also go ahead and highlight, take a course, a medical gas system must. A person who is employed by a licensed plumbing contractor to install, improve, repair, and maintain a medical gas system must take a course of at least 8 hours of both class and practical work designed to teach familiarity in performing and inspecting. So just go ahead and highlight the 8 hours in this section. Okay. Other license requirements. The financial stability on which the CILB will refuse to qualify an applicant is failure to provide proof of either a financial stability bond or an irrevocable letter of credit, which must remain in effect until the applicant can demonstrate a credit score FICO derived of 660 or higher. So you guys gotta have about 660 credit of 660 or higher than that. If not, I guess there's like this study which you'll have to study course you guys will have to take, which is 14 hours financial responsibility course. And go ahead and highlight the numbers here for me, 660, and also highlight 20,000 for Division 1 applicants, 10,000 for Division 2 applicants. Also go ahead and highlight 14 hours financial responsibility course approved by board. Also highlight the 50% of the financial stability bond. Highlight 10,000 for an unlimited electrical and alarm contractor, and 5,000 for a specialty contractor. All right, so public liability insurance. I remember getting a question from the exam that talked exactly about this page, and it was about liability insurance, how much liability insurance I have to carry as a general contractor. And I pretty much moved over to this page, and my answer was like right there highlighted. It was 300,000 liability insurance for a general contractor. And it was that easy, guys. Evidence of workers' compensation coverage as a condition precedented to the insurance or renewal of a certificate of registration on construction or electrical alarm contractor. The CILB or electrical contractors licensing board must be provided with evidence of workers' compensation coverage. I'm gonna have to highlight this part. But go ahead and highlight notice of election to be exempt with the Division of Workers' Compensation of the Department of Labor and Employment Security, which is page 217. I hope you guys can see that in the video. Now, let's talk about continuing education. And I did get a question about continuing education as well. And it was also at least 14 classroom or interactive distance learning hours of continuing education every 2 years. So this is a question I had also in that exam. So go ahead and highlight 2 years and also at least 14 classroom for me. A person is not required to complete any continuing education requirements for the year in which a certificate or registration is initially issued. A person who obtains a certificate or registration more than 12 months prior to the end of a biennial period is required to complete 7 hours of approved continuing education. So just go ahead and highlight 7 hours and 12 months for me. Business record. Contractors licensed pursuant to Chapter 489 Florida statutes must maintain complete financial and business record kept in regular course of business for the immediately preceding 3 years. So all the business records has to be kept for financial and other things for 3 years. And I do remember I got this question as well when I was taking the exam. All right, so licensing exemption. I had a question from this chapter as well. So go ahead and highlight licensing exemption and read through all of this exemption that we have. Highway, street, road, bridge, railway contractors and services incidental thereto. Employees of licensed contractor acting within the scope of contractor's license with the knowledge and permission of licensed contractor. So anytime it talks about the exemption of license for any sort of question in the exam, automatically move on to this page right here. And whenever you guys are reading a question, you will automatically know what this question is telling you to go. So if it talks about licensing and it has the licensing word in the question, you know where to go. It's gonna be obviously and definitely in this licensing chapter. So go ahead and highlight any numbers you see in the exemption section. Stuff like not exceeding routine maintenance or repair or construction not exceeding $200,000 to existing installations. And then one building or improving farm outbuildings or one family or two family homes for the occupancy or use of the owner and not offered for sale or lease, or building improving commercial buildings on such property at a cost not to exceed $75,000, not offered for sale or lease. So $75,000, go ahead and highlight that for me. And then on this paragraph, just highlight 2 or 3 families. And then the next paragraph, go ahead and highlight for a 1 family or 2 family residence. And the last one, okay, I do remember getting this question. It was asking about this. With certain exceptions, persons performing work for a casual or inconsequential nature with a contract price of less than $2,500, unless the person represents that he or she is a qualified contractor. So go ahead and highlight that for me again. And sorry about all this painting again. It was my little sister. On this chapter, it talks about person. It's the same chapter, and it's at this page. On this page as well, it's talking about the exemptions. So go ahead and highlight 3 ton or 36,000 BTU, which have no ducts and which have a factory installed electrical cord and plug. That's for the exemption section as well. Also, go ahead and highlight this line. It says architects, landscape architects, and engineers who offer design build services. Next line, we have less than 5,000. And the next paragraph, we have any 1 family, 2 family, or 3 family. Highlight that for me as well. And the last one we have sale, delivery, assembly, or tie down of lawn storage building and storage buildings not exceeding 400 square feet. Go ahead and highlight that for me as well. Maintenance employee of an apartment complex with at least 100 units certified as an apartment maintenance technician by National Apartment Association. Go ahead, highlight 100 units for me. All right, now we have subcontracting requirements. This is the sections where we determine if the contractor, general contractor, will have to subcontract these things or not. So a contractor shall subcontract all the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, roofing, sheet metal, swimming pool, and air conditioning work, unless such contractor holds a state certified or registration in the respective trade category. However, the following exceptions are recognized. So first one, clearing. General contractor and certified underground utility and excavation contractor may perform clearing, grubbing, grading, excavation, and other site work for a construction project. So go ahead, just highlight these key things: clearing, grubbing, grading, excavation, and other site work. Certified building contractor and certified residential contractor may perform clearing, grubbing, grading, excavation, and other site work for a construction project, limited to the lot on which any specific building is located. General building and residential contractors are not required to subcontract the installation or repair made under warranty. If it's under warranty, you don't have to subcontract wood shingles, wood shakes, or asphalt, or fiberglass, shingle roofing materials on new buildings of their own construction. If it's their own construction, new buildings, they don't have to subcontract for these specific things. So just go ahead and highlight these specific things only: wood shingles, wood shakes, asphalt, fiberglass, and also don't forget to highlight are not required to subcontract. Because I do remember getting this one over here. General contractors are not required to subcontract structural swimming pool work. So I had a question similar to this where it was asking if the general contractor is required to subcontract structural swimming pool work. So make sure you guys go ahead and highlight their part. And whenever they say contractor in the book, they're generally referring to general contractor. I was confused on some of those things, and it's probably just me, so I just wanted to put it out there. General contractors are not required to the subcontractor. The construction of the main sanitary sewer collection. So go ahead and highlight main sanitary sewer collection system. And just highlight are not required for all of these sections, and then highlight the key terms like utility lines from the mains on mobile home parks. And the next page is kind of messy. There's nothing much to highlight from this section, so let's just move on to the next page. Qualifying agent. I did get this question from, I'm gonna go over this. If a qualifying agent is the only licensed contractor affiliated with the business organization, the business organization must notify DVPR of the termination of the qualifying agent and obtain another qualifying agent within 60 days. So go ahead and highlight that part for me. Professional responsibility liability. In a business entity with one qualifying agent, the qualifying agent is responsible for supervision of all operation of the business, for all field work at all sites, unless a financial responsible officer is designated for financial matters of the organization and for a specific job. Go ahead and highlight these 3 lines as well, because I remember getting a question something similar to it as well. So go ahead and highlight that as well. A secondary qualifying agent is responsible only for supervision of field work at sites where his license was used to obtain the building permit, and any other work for which he accepts responsibility. A secondary qualifying agent is not responsible for supervision of financial matters. Go ahead and highlight that for me. A business entity may designate a financial responsible officer, FRO, for the purpose of certification. You guys might get a question for what is FRO. So it's financial responsible officer. I have that highlighted as well. All right, so next page, we don't have much to cover. A qualifying agent engagement for another. A qualifying agent's engagement of another to supervise the construction process will not relieve him of responsibility. In addition, a contractor may be fined up to $5,000 if an unlicensed person associated with the firm conceals material information from the firm's qualifying agent. So go ahead, just highlight the amount that we have on the page, which is $5,000. So this is what I was talking about earlier, that most of the stuff are gonna be on these pages. There's another important page for the licensing chapter, which we're gonna cover in next five or 6 minutes. All right, so next page we have subcontractors, independent contractors or employees. Nothing much to cover here. Okay, so go ahead and highlight this paragraph we have, just 2 these lines. Generally, a worker is an independent contractor if the person or entity for whom services are performed has right to control or direct only the result of the work and not the means and methods of accomplishing the result. So just go ahead and highlight these 2 lines we have. The next thing we have is IRS common law test. So law test that we have is just highlight behavioral, financial type of relationship. Now move over to the behavioral control. Just go ahead and highlight the behavioral, and go ahead also highlight behavioral control factors fall into the categories: types of instruction given, degree of instruction, evaluation system, training. Now page 228. Ways to avoid having independent contractors treated as employee. So these are some of the norms. Go ahead, highlight just this part, being treated as an independent contractor. Highlight 1099. Also highlight $600 or more. If it's any more than that, then you have the contractor will have to file 1099. And then go ahead, also highlight this part as well. Don't ever pay bonuses to a person you treat as an independent contractor. All right, moving on. Penalties for unlicensed activity. Any person who falsely holds himself or herself out to be a licensed contractor, or who engages in contracting without first obtaining a license, is guilty of a first-degree misdemeanor. And the second offense is a third-degree felony. So go ahead and highlight both of these penalties. These 3 lines. And then this paragraph over here. In addition, in any section against a contractor for injuries sustained resulting from the contractor's negligence, malfeasance, or misfeasance, the consumer is entitled to 3 times the actual damage. So go ahead and highlight 3 times the actual damages. Actual damages sustained and cost and attorney's fees. So the fees and 3 times the actual damages. Go ahead and highlight that for me. Now, one of the questions I got in the exam was from this paragraph. Changes in licensure information. A business organization must inform the Department of Business and Professional Regulation by mail of any change in the information required to be submitted on the application for qualification of a business within 45 days following the change. Okay, so just go ahead and highlight the 45 days and the first line. License number must appear on building permits and advertisement. Yes, so that's another question I got as well in the exam. So go ahead and highlight registration or certificate number on each building permit issued to him. In addition, a contractor's license must appear in advertisement concerning the contractor, including text or work on the contractor's vehicle. Go ahead and highlight it. Now, disciplinary action against contractor. I would say on this one, just highlight obtaining a license fraud. Just highlight fraud or misrepresentation, and the penalty $5,000 to $10,000. For the next line as well, just highlight the guilty, and then practice of contracting $3,500 to $10,000. So just highlight the key terms, because you don't want to be reading the whole line. So just highlight the keywords that's gonna be visible whenever you are flipping the pages over. Same goes for this side as well. Assisting a person or entity in the unlicensed practice of contracting, $5,000 to $10,000. Combining, conspiring with an unlicensed person to evade the licensing laws, $5,000 to $109,000 penalty. Acting as a contractor other than in the name reflected on the license, $1,500 to $5,000. So go ahead, just highlight the key terms from there, and also the penalty that we have. All right, so moving on to the next page. In evaluating disciplinary action against a contractor, construction is considered to be commenced when the contract is executed and contractor has accepted funds from the customer or lender. A contractor does not commit a violation when he or she relies on a building code interpretation rendered by a building official. Absent a finding of fraud or deceit, gross negligence, repeated negligence, or negligence resulting in a significant danger to life or property on part of the building official. Go ahead and highlight these lines as well for me, these last three lines. And for any sort of penalty and all those, for any detailed information, it's also gonna be in chapter 455 and chapter 489, and on these chapters as well, 61 G4 17.001, which we're gonna cover in a little while. Now we are on chapter 455. This is a really important page, chapter 455 and chapter 489, because I remember getting a bunch of questions. I would say, when I say a bunch, I probably got about easy. I probably got about 20 questions from combining 455 and 489, combining these two pages. So 455 is one of the chapter. It covers business and professional regulation, general provisions. That's for general provisions, that's 455. And then I'm pretty sure you guys can see I have them tabbed. So that's for chapter 455. And chapter 489, this one covers about construction contracting, electrical and alarm system contracting, septic tank contracting. So these two chapters are gonna be heavily used in the exam as well. So right now I'm gonna go back to 455 and tell you some of the stuff to highlight. So first of all, we're gonna start with the definition. So definition, it will tell you, you might get a question about what is board. So if someone asks about board, automatically just go to the definition for any of this chapter, 455. So go to 455, and then you have board. It tells you, means any board or commission or other statutorily created entity to the extent such entity is authorized to exercise regulatory or rulemaking functions within the department, and etc. So now you guys know for any sort of those definitions where to come and look for. Go ahead and highlight licensure of members of the armed force in good standing and spouses. So just highlight armed forces, just highlight that part. And then next one is gonna be 455.10, restriction on requirement of citizenship. So just highlight citizenship on that part. Next one, 455.11, just highlight qualification of immigrants for examination. And then most important one for 455 is the chapter 455 is 455.203, department powers and duties. This will cover pretty much most of the stuff from the chapter 455. When I say most, it's probably I'm talking like 30 to 35% of the questions is gonna be covered on the department section. I remember getting at least probably 3 questions from the department section. And then go ahead to 455.207 and highlight just boards from that section. Now we're gonna move on to the limited licenses, which is 455.214. Just highlight limited licenses. And then 455.2175, penalty for theft or reproduction of an examination. Highlight that one as well. And then 455.2185, exemptions for certain out-of-state or for foreign professionalisms, limited practice permitted. So just highlight exemptions on that one. And then 455.219, just highlight fees, just the fees. It talks about fees, receipts, disposition, and other reports and stuff, but just highlight fees on that section. And then on the right side column, go to mediation, 455.2235. So just highlight mediation from that page. And then right underneath that one is authority to issue citation. Highlight just a citation. So I'm not sure if you guys are noticing or not. I'm just highlighting the key terms. Now, if you guys might ask, like, how's it gonna help you just highlighting the key terms? Well, whenever you're reading a question, right, it's gonna tell you like, oh, for citation this, what's the penalty? So when you hear citation, all you gotta do is just come to this section, and your citation section is right there, right in front of you. Now all you gotta do is just look through 455.204, and your information will be right there. Okay, so citation for that one, and then right underneath that one is 455.225, disciplinary proceedings. Go ahead and highlight that one for me as well. And then we have 455.227, grounds for discipline. Highlight that one. Also highlight penalties right next to it as well. And then we have 455.2273, disciplinary guidelines. Highlight that one as well. I remember getting a question from that section. And then highlight 455.2274, criminal proceeding against licenses. So just highlight criminal and licenses. And the next one we have 455.2275, penalty for giving false information. I got a question from that section as well. So go ahead and highlight penalty and false information. 455.2277, prosecution of criminal violation, just highlight violation. And then we have 455.228, unlicensed practice of a profession. And then we have civil penalty citation. So highlight citations, civil penalty, and unlicensed practice. Right below it, we have unlicensed activities. So just highlight unlicensed activities. And also we have fees. So highlight fees as well. Now we're gonna move on to 455.242. Just highlight terminating from this section. And of course, 455.271, inactive and delinquent status. I guarantee you guys will get these questions in your exam. Okay, so I highlight inactive and delinquent status for chapter 455.271. Also, right underneath it is 455.273. Highlight renewal and cancellation notice. That should be it for the chapter highlighting for chapter 455. Now we're just gonna go over some of the things this chapter 455 have. Licensure of members 455.02. Just highlight 2 years 2 years after discharge from active duty. So for this chapter, there's a lot of things to cover. If I try to read it, it will probably take me a couple days. I'm still not gonna be done. So we're just gonna read the highlighted stuff that I have for this chapter 451, and then we'll move on to the next one. Go ahead and highlight 2 years after discharge from active duty for 455.02, and then move on to 455.11, qualifications of immigrants for examination to practice a licensed profession. Highlight that one, and then go ahead highlight for number 1, Florida residents duty. Florida residents duty qualified to become actively qualified in their profession. Highlight that part for me, and then move on to 455.203, and just highlight 4-year license to selected licensees. And then move on to the next page, 10A. It's gonna tell you close and terminate deficient license application files 2 years after the Board of Department notices. So highlight 2 years for me. 455.204, just highlight less than 5 years. And for 455.207, highlight board shall meet at least once annually and may meet as often as necessary. So one trick that I saw in the exam is sometimes you see how it says 2 years here in number for this paragraph over here. So in the book, it will show you for the answers 2 years in letters. It will say TWO. So don't get confused on that part. So it's not always gonna be in numbers in the exam. It might be in, so instead of saying 2 years, they might say like 24 months, which is equal to 2 years. So don't get confused on that part. Anyways, moving on. Number 4, just highlight former board member, $50 for each day. And then moving on to B1, a conviction or any other adjudication for a crime more than 5 years. Just highlight 5 years before the date, and for denial of a license specified. So make sure you highlight denial of a license specified. Moving on to number 7, continuing education for renewal of a license. So highlight just the key terms: renewal of a license, continuing education, maximum of 25% of the required continuing education hours. Just the key terms. We don't want to highlight the whole thing because you see how small these letters are, and in the exam you're not going to have that much time to read the whole paragraph. So just the key terms is the way to go. Moving on, 455.214. Go ahead and highlight retired professionals in good standing, not to exceed $300, United States for at least 10 years in the profession. Just this key terms, that's all. Alright, moving on to chapter 455.2175. Penalty for theft or reproduction of an exam is a felony of third degree. So make sure you highlight felony of third degree, and also go ahead highlight penalty for theft or reproduction. Remember, we already highlight this part in the first page over here. I'm not sure if you guys remember or not, but where is it? Right here. Penalty for theft or reproduction. So you see how easy it is. All you gotta do is just look through it. If you have highlighted, just swipe your pages, go to 452.2175, and boom, there you have the answer right there. Anyways, so for number 2, let's highlight continuing education records relating continuing education courses for at least 4 years. Just the key terms. On the very next page, for chapter 455.2179, go ahead and highlight Florida Real Estate Commission, not to exceed $250 for anyone seeking approval to offer. Now, chapter 455.219, go ahead and highlight duplicate license is required or requested by the licensee, the board, or if there is no board, the department may charge a fee as determined by the rule not to exceed $25. Go ahead and highlight $25. Also on number 6, highlight exceed, not to exceed $25 for certification. Now we have 455.2235, mediation. I got a question for mediation as well. So let's highlight mediation number 2. Go ahead and highlight determines a complaint. Highlight complaint. Alleged violation. Highlight violation. And then if the complaint, highlight the complaint as well. And then we have within 14 days after contact by mediator. So make sure I highlight 14 days. And then also highlight mediator shall notify the department of the terms of resolution. Within 60 days of the mediator's notification to the department, in the event the complainant and subject fail to reach settlement terms or to record the required acknowledgement, the department shall process the complaint according to the provision of 455.225. So just go ahead and highlight 60 days for the mediators. Number 4, no licensee shall go through the mediation process more than 3 times. Now that's the exact answer I found in one of the questions for the exam as well. So just highlight 3 times for mediation. Now, chapter 455.225, disciplinary proceedings. B, head over to B and highlight an investigation of any subject in undertaken. The department shall promptly furnish the subject or the subject's attorney a copy of the complaint or document that resulted in the initiation of the investigation. The subject may submit a written response to the information contained in such complaint or document within 20 days. So just go ahead and highlight 20 days and also highlight written response to the information and just these highlighted terms. Now moving on to 3A1 3A, number 2. Failure of a licensee to take action in the correcting the violation within 15 days. Highlight 15 days. And then on the very last paragraph, we have a request for additional investigative information shall be made within 15 days. 15 days, highlight 15 days. Receipt by the probable cause panel of the investigative report of the department. Probable cause within 30 days after the receipt. So go ahead, highlight 30 days as well. And then right below it, we have the secretary may grant extension. Highlight grant extension 15 days and 15-day and 30-day time limit. So in between this, so highlight both of these as well. It's on chapter 247. See, I was telling you guys, it's a lot to cover here. So I guess I'm just gonna read out the highlighted terms, and you guys just follow with me and just highlight these terms. So 455.2255. 2 years have passed. A final order. That's all we're highlighting on this section. Next one, 455.227. Grounds for discipline penalties. Remember, we read the same thing on the first page for chapter 455. So let's go ahead and highlight on D, class 3 or a class 4 laser device. And then let's move on to I and highlight failing to report to the department. Also highlight unlicensed person or entity to practice a profession contrary to this chapter. The chapter regulating the profession or the rules of the department or the board. These are all the terms that are gonna be, let's say if you get a penalty and you're gonna be paying penalty about I think it was mentioned somewhere around here. Hold on one second. Okay, so right there. So the penalty is gonna be $5,000 each for any of these. So go ahead, also highlight practicing or offering beyond the scope. Highlight that part. Violating any provision of this chapter, which is Q. A number, and then T, letter T, failing to report in writing to the board within 30 days. And then move on to 2 and highlight not to exceed 2D, highlight not to exceed 5,000 for each or separate offense. So for all of these penalties, it's gonna be, for any of these penalties from this list, it's gonna be 5,000 for each. Disciplinary guidelines. Go ahead and highlight guidelines, which is number 5. Guidelines established by the board or department and must state in writing. Move on to 455.2275, penalty for giving false information. By knowingly misleading statements or knowing misrepresentation constitutes a felony of 3rd degree. So it's a felony for giving false information. Highlight that part as well. Moving on to 455.228, unlicensed practice of a profession. So just highlight the key terms: enforcement and citation. And for 2 and 2, yes, so for 2-1, highlight violation, highlight $500, no less than $500, and then also highlight $5,000 for each offense. Now right on top of B, we have 3A. Now go ahead and highlight in the citation with the department within 30 days after the citation is served. The citation shall become a final order for the department. The penalty shall be a fine of no less than $500 or more than $5,000. Highlight that part. 455, or so I think we missed one of these here. So for 455.228, also highlight not to exceed $5,000 per incident. Okay, moving on. 455.2281 it covers unlicensed activities and fees. So go ahead and highlight unlicensed and fees, and then go ahead and highlight a special fee of $5 per licensee. So this is also one of the question. I'm guaranteeing that I could guarantee like you guys will get this question. It talks about a special fee of $5 per licensee. And why do they charge it? They charge it to fund efforts to combat unlicensed activity. So go ahead and highlight that one. Now we're gonna look at 455.271. Inactive and delinquent status. An inactive status licensee may change to active status at any time, provided the licensee meets all the requirements for active status, pays any additional licensure fees necessary to equal those imposed on an active status licensee. Highlight this part. Now next page, 254. Let's look at number 7 and just highlight delinquency fee of $25 on a delinquent status licensee when such licensee applies for active or inactive status. Guaranteed this is gonna be on the exam as well. They want people to know about how to renew the license, or what's the fee for changing status from inactive to active, and all those kind of things. Now let's move on to 455.273, renewal and cancellation notices. At least 90 days before the end of a licensure cycle, the department shall forward a licensure renewal notification to inactive. Highlight this part. Forward a notice of pending cancellation of licensure to a delinquent status licensee. Highlight this part as well. All right, so now we are back on chapter 489 that we talked about earlier. So for 489, which comes right after 455, let's go ahead and highlight the key terms for this content that we have, table of content. First one is 489.103, exemptions. Highlight exemptions. And then 489.109, fees. Highlight fees. And then we have 489.113, highlight qualifications for practice, and also highlight restriction. And then 489.1136, medical gas certification. Highlight the whole thing. I got a question about the medical gas certification on the exam. Now move on to 489.115. Just highlight certification and registration, and highlight the renewal. Just the key terms, that's it. And then highlight for 489.116, highlight inactive, delinquent status, renewal. For 489.117, highlight specialty contractors. Just these two key terms, that's it. Now for 489.119, highlight qualifying agents. Now for 489.121, death of registration upon death of contractor. Now I got a question from 489.121 as well in the exam, so go ahead and highlight that for me. Next one, 489.124, just highlight business records. 489.126, highlight monies received by the contractor. 489.127, highlight penalties. For 489, 129 or 129, highlight disciplinary proceedings. I would say I probably got about 2 or 3 questions from disciplinary proceedings. So go ahead and highlight that for me. 489.13, highlight unlicensed, highlight building permit. 489.132, highlight unlicensed, highlight penalties. 489.140, highlight homeowners, highlight recovery fund. 489.1402, highlight homeowners, highlight recovery fund. They look similar, but they still have some of the stuff that are a little different than each other. So for 489, 140 and 489.1402, they look similar, but please go through those. 489.141, just recovery. 489.1425, recovery fund. That's all for the table of content for 489. Oh man, let me get some water. Okay, so page 259, first paragraph, just highlight 200,000 to existing installation. And then move on to this middle paragraph 1 and just highlight not to exceed $75,000. Moving on to page 261, go ahead and highlight any work or operation of a casual manner. It's on number 9. So any work or operation of casual manner, highlight in which the aggregate contract price for labor, materials, or other items is less than $2,500. And then 9A, if the construction, repair, remodeling, or improvement is a part of a larger or major operation, go ahead and highlight that part and also highlight amount less than $2,500 for the purpose of evading. I'm not sure if you guys remember this exemption part, but we covered it. We covered it in the starting of chapter licensing. Okay, so moving on. Top right corner, number 14. Just highlight 3 tons or 36,000 BTU. Number 17, just highlight contracting for repair, maintenance, remodeling, or improvement by any person licensed under Part 1 of Chapter 475. Highlight registration issued under this part. Highlight item is less than $5,000 in the same paragraph. And then 17A, highlight maintenance, repair, remodeling, or improvement is a part of a larger undertaking. Highlight less than $5,000 for the purpose of evading. Chapter 262, just highlight 4C all the way at the bottom. An individual repair does not involve. And then on the next line, just highlight more than $1,000. Remember, like I mentioned before, again, we're just highlighting the key terms. We don't want to highlight the whole book. Because at the exam, whenever we open the book, we want to see the answer like right away whenever we land on the pages. All right, so page 267, fees. Now, you guys will definitely get a question from this part. Fees, 489, 109. So 1A, just highlight certificate for a certificate, and on the next line highlight not exceed $150, and then on the next line highlight examination cost. Next line highlight not exceed $350. Next line highlight certification fee, renewal fee may not exceed $250. Now 1B, highlight not exceed $100. On the next line, may not exceed $200. Now 1C, highlight delinquency fees not to exceed. Highlight 1E, actually 1D, renewal fee shall be $50. 1E, highlight renewal fee for an inactive status certificate or registration not to exceed. And then highlight renewal fee again, highlight active status certificate. Next line, highlight inactive certification fee. And then on the next line, highlight inactive registration fee may exceed $50. Chapter 268. Number 3. First line, just highlight fees. Second line, highlight renewal for certification and registration. And then on the next line, highlight fee of $4. And then starting from fund projects relating to the building construction industry or continuing education programs offered to the person engaged in the building construction industry in Florida. Highlight these 3 lines for me. Now we're moving on to 489.113. Just highlight restrictions and then highlight to establish competency, a person shall pass the appropriate exam. Move on to number 3. State shall subcontract all electrical, plumbing, roofing, sheet metal, swimming pool, and air conditioning work. And then 3A, highlight structural component. Now 3B, just highlight shall not be required. 3C, just highlight shall not be. For 3D, same thing, shall not be required. And for 3D, at the bottom, you guys will see it says underground, utility, and excavation contractor. So highlight both of these key terms. Now we are on 271. Remember I told you guys about medical gas certification? I got a question about the hours of studies that's required for medical gas certification. And it's actually 6 hours. So let's go ahead and highlight 6 hours. And also highlight such licenses. Now we're on page 272. Evidence of workers' compensation coverage. Go all the way at the bottom and highlight administrative fine in amount of $500. Moving on to 489.115. Just highlight renewals, and then for 4A, highlight certificate holder or registrant. Also highlight renew the certificate or registration every 2 years. So every 2 years it has to be registered. Move on to 3C on the right side. Certificate holder or registrant shall complete, sign, and forward the renewal application to the department together with the appropriate fee. I remember getting a question about this on exam. Now, chapter 274. Move on to 489.116, number 3. And then an inactive status certificate holder or registrant may change to active status at any time if the certificate holder or registrant meets all requirements for active status, pays any additional licensure fee. Highlight that for me. Number 4, certificate or registration to become delinquent, certificate or registration. Okay, that's the highlight for this page 274. Now, number 5, just highlight delinquent status. Number 6, just highlight 1 renewal cycle. It's on the 3rd line. Now for number 8, first line, highlight at least 60 days prior to the end of your licensure. Now for 89.117, for just highlight specialty contractors, and then move on to C. Registrant shall report to the board each local jurisdiction and each category of the registration. Also highlight within 30 days after obtaining such certificate or license. Now chapter 489.119. Move on to the right side of it, and it's gonna be 3A. Middle of this paragraph, highlight termination of the qualifying agent and shall have 60 days from the termination. Remember guys, just the key terms, that's all we are highlighting here. Moving on to the next page. For 5D, first line, board shall issue a notice of non-compliance for the first offense. Third line, within 30 days or for any subsequent offense to any contractor. Include the certification or registration number as required by this part. Number 6, each qualifying agent shall pay the department original fee. Third line, qualify a new business organization. Fifth line, board. Sixth line, require the qualifying agent. Eighth line, approval of each business. And then the last line, with the board. Just the key terms. So it's easier for us to read it whenever we are navigating from one chapter to another. So for number 3, last line is gonna be maintains a minimum net worth of $20 million. Moving on to 489.1195. On the right side of the column, 3B, status of qualifying agent. Third line, highlights 60 days after the satisfactory notice of termination. Move on to number C. First line, if no new primary qualifying agent. Second line, within 60 days, all secondary qualifying agents for the business organization shall become primary qualifying agent. Now, 489.121. Emergency registration upon death of contractor. Highlight the whole thing over here. Now, this is one of the questions that you will definitely get in the exam. Now, middle of this paragraph. Within 30 days after the death of the contractor, of his or her name, address, knowledge of the contract, ability to complete it, if the board approves. So just highlight within 30 days after the death of the contractor. 489.124, just highlight business records, and then go ahead and highlight number 1, all contractors who are registered. Second line, complete financial. Third line, records. Fourth line, 3 years. Next page, 279. 489.125, pre-qualification of certificate holder. Second line, district school board pursuant. That's all we're highlighting for this section. Now, 489.126, I got a question from this section as well. So highlight 2A, 10% of the contract, and then for number 1, apply for permits necessary within 30 days after the date payment is received. Number 2, start the work within 90 days after the date all necessary permits for the work are issued. Move on to number 2. Second line, contractor fails to apply. Fourth line, 30 days of receiving written demand to apply for the necessary permits. And then 3A, receives money for the repair. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, fifth line, highlight refuse to perform. And then sixth line, highlight 90-day period for any period that is mutually agreed. Chapter 280, 3C. Let's go ahead and highlight the second line, contractor fails to perform work. Fourth line, within 30 days after receiving a written demand to perform the work. Now, let's move on to 489.127. Go ahead and highlight penalties for me. And 1G, second line, highlight 60 days following the termination of its only qualifying agent without designating another primary qualifying agent. 2A, highlight unlicensed person violates 1 misdemeanor of first degree. 2B, highlight unlicensed person violation, third line, felony of third degree. Just the key terms, that's it. We're not highlighting the whole section here. And then same 2D, fourth line, just highlight commits a felony of third degree. Next page, number 3. Just first line, just highlight stop work order. Second line, all unlicensed work. And then, all right, so on the right side, we got 7C. Second line, just highlight municipality, enforce codes, and the middle of the paragraph, highlight may not exceed $2,000. And then on 7D, we first line just highlight citation, third line highlight violation, fourth line highlight civil penalty, fifth line highlight citation or within 10 days of receipt, and then sixth line highlight citation exclusive of weekends and legal holidays. Number 4, each day a willful knowing violation, just this first line. Next page, 282. First paragraph, just highlight second line, special magistrate violation. Third line, fourth line, civil penalty. Sixth line, $2,500 per day for each violation. I can't exactly remember, but I think I got a question about that on the exam. Anyways, moving on. Next page, 283, 489.129, disciplinary proceeding. Third line, licensee, revoke, suspend. Eighth line, fine not to exceed $10,000 per violation, require continuing education, or assess costs associated with the investigation and prosecution if the contractor financially responsible officer. And the next line after that, primary qualifying agent. And then on the very last line we have found guilty of any of the following acts. And then 1D, first line, performing any act which assists a person. Second line, prohibited, uncertified. Third line, unregistered practice. And then 1E, first line, knowingly. Second line, uncertified or unregistered person. Next column, on the right side, second line, uncertified or unregistered, intend to evade the provision. And then 1G, first line, committing mismanagement or misconduct. Second line, practice of contracting, financial harm to a customer, financial mismanagement or misconduct. Number 1, valid lien have been recorded. And then on the very last line of this paragraph, within 75 days after the date of such liens. All right, now we're gonna move on to 3J, first line, abandoning a construction. Third line, a project may be presumed abandoned after 90 days if the contractor terminates the project without just cause. Very last line, without the just cause for 90 consecutive days. Page 284, first line. At page 284, I apologize. Letter O, first line, proceeding on any job without obtaining applicable local building department permits. And in the middle paragraph, a building code, just highlight a building code, and for number 1 in the middle paragraph, a qualifying agent, just highlight qualifying agent. And then third paragraph from the qualifying agent, construction project undertaken, just highlight that part. And then $5,000 per violation against a business organization or against any partner, officer, or trustee. Highlight violation, and then of the violation and failed to take reasonable corrective action. Just the key term, that's it. Next page, 489, go ahead and highlight unlicensed. Number 1, any person performing an activity requiring licensure under this part as a construction contractor is guilty of unlicensed contracting if he or she does not hold a valid active certificate. Highlight this 4th line for me. On the right column, number 3, go ahead and highlight the second line, fine up to $10,000 on any unlicensed person. Then on the third line, unlicensed contract. Sixth line, go ahead and highlight unlicensed contractor as well for me. And on the last line, you guys will see it says within 1 year after the imposition of the fine under this subsection. Now take a look at 4B, third line, unlicensed contractor shall collect 30% of the fine collected. Then moving on to number 5, highlight local building department, not issue building permit to any contractor. Then fourth line, certificate or registration in the appropriate category. Also go ahead, highlight the last line of this paragraph, an activity that does not require licensure under this part. Page 286, right side, last paragraph. In the middle of the paragraph, highlight local jurisdiction. Enforcement body may conduct disciplinary proceedings against a locally licensed or registered contractor. Fine not to exceed $5,000 or a combination thereof. Locally licensed or registered contractor. So just highlight all of these key terms that I just said over here. Next page, D, 7D. First line, department, discipline, contractor, or second line, may challenge the local jurisdiction. Third line, penalty for the board. Fourth line, action to the construction industry licensing board. Fifth line, within 60 days after the issuance. And then sixth line, recommended penalty of the board. Now 489.132. 489.132. Just highlight unlicensed and number 1, no uncertified or unregistered person. And then 1D, assist or participate with any certificate holder. Page 288. Number 3, just the first line, the word violation. Third line, no more than $5,000 and assess reasonable investigative and legal cost for the prosecution of the violation against the violator. And then the next line after that, within 30 days of the filing of the final order. That's it for this page. We're gonna move over to page 290. 290, 3F. First line, highlight a claim for recovery is made within 1 year. Second line, civil, criminal. Third line, award in arbitration. Moving to 489.1425. First line, go ahead and for the title, go ahead, highlight the recovery fund and then move on to number 1. First line, repair, restoration, improvement. Third line, written statement. Fourth line, recovery fund. Fifth line, does not exceed $2,500. And the last line, must be substantially in the following form. Next page, 291. Top left, 2A, upon finding a first violation. Second line, up to $500. Fourth line, finding a second or subsequent violation. And then third line, shall fine the contractor $1,000 per violation. Remember, it's per violation. So if it's happened more than 2 times, then it's gonna be 1,000 times 2. So $2,000 for that violation. Okay, nothing here. Nothing here. All right, so page 2107, move over to the last paragraph, inactive status. Go ahead and highlight inactive status, and then inactive status number 2, line 3, go ahead and highlight voluntary inactive status at any time during the period of certification or registration. And then for number 3, go ahead and highlight the first line, shall impose. Second line, inactive certificate holder. Third line, when inactive status is sought by certificate holders. Okay, page 2110, emergency registration upon death of contractor. 2, 3, 4, fourth line, within 30 days after the death of contractor. Just go ahead and highlight that line. Also on page 211, 489, 531, prohibition and penalties, just go ahead and highlight penalties. And then on the right side of this page, go ahead and move over to D, letter D, and on the 5th line, go ahead and highlight within 10 days of receipt of the citation. Okay, so this is the complicated part I was talking about. So there's a probably 5 to 10% chance, not even 10%, it's probably 5 to 8% chance that you will be coming over to these pages for chapter 61G4. It's a very rare case. In the whole exam, I probably got about 2 questions or 3 questions where I had to come over to these sections. So this is a very rare case because a lot of this stuff you guys see over here, for example, for chapter 61G412, it says fees. We already covered all this stuff in those other pages that we just covered earlier. So the stuff that you see over here, these are just the detailed versions of those. Even though the information that we have on those pages, they're enough. But I guess the licensing board, they just like to make things a little complicated at times. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and prepare for the worst case scenario. So go ahead on 61G4 12.008, time for compliance with final order. Go ahead and highlight final order for me. First line, civil penalty for violation, chapter 455. Second line, penalty shall be paid within 30 days of imposition. And then 5th line, go ahead and highlight state for 30 days. 6th line, highlight 30 days again. 7th line, highlight 30 days again. And then move over to number 3, failure to pay a fine within the time. Second line, go ahead, highlight 18%. That's it for this page. And then the fees section. I already mentioned about this part, but go ahead and highlight 1A, application and examination fee, certification, $335. Remember I told you guys about sometimes they write this stuff in number and sometimes they like to write them in words. So boom, there it is, $335. So highlight that one. And then on the 3rd line, go ahead and highlight $135 again. To department. And then go ahead and highlight $80 to cover examination administration. And then the next line, go ahead and highlight applicant will pay the department $40 for processing of the application. And then on letter B, 1B, first line, go ahead and highlight and unsuccessful examinee or approved, failed to appear at the examination. Second line, $135 paid to department. Third line, $80. Next page, biennial renewal. And then 6, application fee for reactivation of an inactive certification, $100. Number 8, Fee for duplicate copy, $25. I don't know if you guys remember, we already covered that part on the fee section, but here we have it in details again on this section. Number 9, fee to transfer a registration from active to inactive, $50. And then 10B, biannual renewal fee, $50. 12A, processing a licensee's request to change licensure status, second line, $50. And then go ahead and highlight probable cause for 61G for 12.010. And then move over to next page, chapter 224. For definition, move over to number 3. Just highlight advertises, apply to business cards, business proposal, contracts, and constructions. So that's the one I got on the exam. And it's a very rare case that you guys are going to be coming over to here and to look at these things. Because like I said, 90% of the stuff are going to be covered in those other sections that you have for general licensing. And then move over to page 127 for chapter 2, unexcused absence. Last line, middle of the last line, 48 hours prior to admitting unless circumstances. Just highlight that part. It's nothing much to see here. This liability and stuff, we already have that on the first part of the licensing chapter. So see, we don't really have to come take a look at this because this stuff's already covered. But go ahead and highlight this for me. Financially responsible for business organization, $100,000 payable to the board for fines and cost. And then go ahead on 3A, first line, appear before the board. Okay, then page 2133, notification of changes. A certificate holder or registrant shall notify board office within 30 days of a change in name, style, or address from that which appears on the current certificate of the registration. So just go ahead and highlight that date for me. And then the last paragraph, replacement of qualifying person. Number 1, first line. Person shall have 60 days from the date the qualifier terminated his affiliation within which to obtain another qualifying person. Nothing here. And then page chapter 244 page. Go ahead and highlight examination and re-examination for the table of content for the chapter 61 G4 16. And like I said, nothing much to see in these pages because a lot of those things are already covered. But on chapter 2, page 156, go ahead and highlight oral examination, and for duration of validity 61 G4 16.005, just to highlight passing grade shall be valid for 4 years from the date of the most recently passed portion of exam. So whenever we pass the exam, it's valid for 4 years, pretty much. That's what it's saying. And the last page is penalties. Not really the last page, but this is the part. This page should be tabbed you guys should put a tab on this page. Like if you can see, I have a tab. So anytime it's talking about penalties for licensing, I automatically move over to this page. If I can find it anywhere in this page, then of course I have my chapters tab. So I'll go to chapter 489 on contracting and I'll look for penalties, violations, or citations over here. I'll go take a look at that. Same goes for chapter 455 here as well. But it's easier to find them here on the penalty section, because if you look here, it's pretty much notes down. It has all the penalties that you can think of for this chapter. I mean, for the most part. So you can see $5,000 minimum fee and minimum fine and $10,000 maximum fine for obtaining license through fraud or misrepresentation. So I would highly recommend you guys to put a tab on this chapter here, which is page 2159, and you can just tab it right here on the corner. Yes, on this page it all talks about just fines, and it goes until page 161. So just go ahead, and if you guys can, just put a tab on page 2159. Continuing education, registration, completion. And now we're gonna look at page 173, chapter 2, licensing. Go ahead and look at 3G in the middle of the page. First line, recommendation, local government body to construction industry licensing board. Highlight this section. And then number 4, first line, purpose of any challenge to said recommendation shall be issued upon the receipt by the board. So just the key terms, just highlight these key terms. You see, it talks about recovery funds for homeowners. All this stuff, these are already covered on the, what they call it, page 48, 49 or 40. I mean, not page 49. It's chapter 489 or chapter 455. If you take a look at those, then you don't have to really come here, because this pages, it has a lot of information. It's impossible to find any sort of things from these pages. Talks about mediation, but remember, it's already covered. Examination. Another section for fees. Look, if you look over here, they're already covered in chapter 455. So all you gotta do is just look through penalties on chapter 455, or not penalties. All you gotta do is look for fees on chapter 455 or 489. You'll find it there. Education, okay, qualification. And go ahead on chapter 2, page 205, and highlight knowingly aiding unlicensed practice, and the fine is $5,000. And like I said, this stuff's already mentioned in those other sections, so we don't really have to, but we're doing it because I have it highlighted here and it helped me sometimes. It's impossible to cover and know every single page of this. That's why I have them highlighted, like the important pages where the questions are really gonna be relevant from. Yeah, so that pretty much be it for chapter 2 licensing. We're gonna go ahead and get started with chapter 3 on our next episode. Thank you for watching.